Speaker.
I call David Clendon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Indeed it will, Ruth, yes. And in that spirit, may I begin by acknowledging the contribution of Ruth Dyson, a very succinct description, but also quite comprehensive of the nature and purpose of statutes, amendment bills, acts in their own right. The unique feature of them that they are agreed to in large part prior to being presented to the House. They are inherently non-controversial, though I do note that the Select Committee, having done its work well, has found one or two matters that are more appropriately dealt with elsewhere, and more power to them for having done that. Sir, it's customary to say it's a pleasure to rise to speak, and of course it is as ever a privilege to rise to speak. But it's also something of a surprise to be debating this evening the Statutes Amendment Act. Until about 5:15 this evening, we believed that tonight we would be in urgency debating the Remuneration Authority Act. And it was a considerable surprise to discover about 5:15 that apparently the government does not yet have its ducks in a row. It's not ready to undertake that debate, and we look forward with some interest to see what will be sprung on us tomorrow morning. But sir, so to return to this bill, it is an omnibus bill. It covers some 30 plus pieces of legislation which are amended by it, and I think many of those amendments highlight the importance of clarity of language, that legislation expresses in the clearest way possible the intention of the legislators. It is the role of the courts, of course, to interpret legislation, to implement and apply it, and indeed of other organisations and agents of state and the private sector. And it's critically important that we get the language as clear and unambiguous as we can. And of course, some of the purpose of these acts is to remedy examples where that language has proven to be less than accessible or less clear than it might be. So I'd like to just mention in passing two particular sections of the Act, being rather parts of the Act, Part 23 and Part 24, which in turn, Part 23 deals with some amendments to the Official Information Act of 1982. It deals with as a previous speaker commented, Mr. Hudson, I think, it outlined that it does explain under what circumstances requests under the Act may be made orally, obligations on both parties to ensure that there's some clarity about what is being asked. It is a useful, it's a more or less technical change to the Act, but nonetheless a useful one. Part 24 deals with the Ombudsman's Act, and again it just clarifies and spells out the situation, the conditions under which the Ombudsman may refuse to conduct an investigation, or rather to investigate a complaint, if the Ombudsman believes that the existing, that there are adequate remedies to be found elsewhere, if the matter is trivial or vexatious, there are a number of provisions there that just spells out with some clarity how and in what circumstances the Ombudsman may refuse to or choose not to pursue an investigation into a complaint. I think it's interesting that those two parts of the bill, what links them in what's happening currently, of course, is that the Ombudsman is undertaking an investigation into the implementation of the Official Information Act. And notwithstanding that we are making some minor technical changes to it, the Ombudsman has stated that she believes that the Act is fit for purpose, that it's serving us well in terms of the intention of the Act, the structure of it. But she believes an inquiry is needed, and I quote, to assure the public that both the letter and the spirit of the Act, of the law, are being observed by the custodians of public information. And I think it's to the considerable credit of the Ombudsman that she has undertaken that investigation, given that there have been rumblings and concerns and expressions of concern about examples of alleged abuse of the Act, of manipulation of it. It is to the credit of Dame Beverly Wakeham, who of course has been an Ombudsman for some 10 years, 7 of them as Chief Ombudsman, and who has certainly brought credit on herself and on that office. So we look forward with interest to that investigation and to see what it produces. Sir, I think I will not endeavour to speak to the other 29 or 30 other parts of the Act, but simply to say that the Greens do support this Act.